Thank you.
Thank you. Knights of the Southern Cross, soldiers of the Ku Klux Klan. We are here in protest of Westboro Baptist Church. I'm a veteran. I spent 9.5 years in the military. I've got brothers and sisters that are buried in this cemetery, and I think that it's an absolute shame that they show up and disrupt people's funerals.
Freedom of speech, as protected by the First Amendment, has been a cornerstone of American society. America has prided itself on the social liberty of its citizens to freely express their opinions and beliefs. But when does freedom of speech cross the line to become a moral injustice? And does the government have the right to restrict their speech in this instance?
Such an instance arose in the case of the Westboro Baptist Church's protests against certain aspects of American society they found offensive. The church, headed by Pastor Fred Phelps, began staging protests in 1991 to protest the tolerance of homosexuality and Catholicism in America. On March 10, 2006, the church traveled to Maryland to picket the funeral of Marine Lance Corporal Matthew Snyder, who had been killed serving in Iraq. The protesters carried signs reading, "Thank God for dead soldiers," "God hates fags," "Pope in hell," and "You're going to hell." Matthew's father, Albert Snyder, filed suit against Phelps and the Westboro Baptist Church on the grounds that the church protesters had committed defamation, publicity given to private life, intentional infliction of emotional distress, intrusion upon seclusion, and civil conspiracy.
Even though the picketers followed all directions and laws, the government argued that the speech of the church members was not necessarily protected.
Justice Black said that things like picketing were not protected by the First Amendment fully because they were speech plus. They were more than that. So it quickly becomes apparent that protecting the First Amendment doesn't mean that everything involving words is off limits for government regulation. Otherwise, you could go into a bank, hand the teller a note that says, "Give me all your money," and then you could argue, when the police haul you in, I was exercising my First Amendment rights.
During the Supreme Court case, it was also argued that the protesters' speech was not protected because it was a private attack directed at the Snyder family and not public commentary. The signs the protesters carried were anti-Catholic and anti-military. Snyder was both a Catholic and a serviceman. The prosecution argued that a reasonable person would have assumed there was a connection between the placards and the deceased. Moreover, since a church funeral naturally brings to mind thoughts about the afterlife, some of the respondents' signs, example given, "God hates you," "not blessed, just cursed," and "you're going to hell," would have likely been interpreted as referring to God's judgment of the deceased. Furthermore, the Westboro Baptist Church wrote an online message addressed directly to the Snyder family, in which the church accused Mr. and Mrs. Snyder of raising their son Matthew to defy his creator, commit adultery, and support the largest pedophile machine in the history of the entire world, the Roman Catholic monstrosity.
Even with the direct address to the Snyder family, the defense argued that the speech was protected by the First Amendment because it dealt with larger public issues and public commentary.
The government has made the argument that there are additional categories of speech that shouldn't be protected by the First Amendment. That also came up, again, Gene mentioned it in the introduction, involving funeral protests of the Westboro Baptist Church. The argument was made that their particular message, which is hateful and I think inexplicable, is something that shouldn't be protected by the First Amendment. Actually, they provoke all kinds of reactions, and we'll see a few more of those, and that's part of why the speech is protected there.
The defense for the Westboro Baptist Church argued that because the church's speech focused on larger public issues such as gay rights and religion, and because it provoked such strong reaction from the public community, it was public debate and not a private attack. The defense argued that because the speech of the Westboro Baptist Church protesters was classified as now public debate, the court had previously decided in the case of Booz versus Berry that in public debate we must tolerate insulting and even outrageous speech in order to provide adequate breathing space to the freedoms protected by the First Amendment.
Snyder versus Phelps, the case involving Westboro Baptist Church, just decided a number of weeks ago. Again, Very hateful speech, really hard to embrace the speaker on this one, and yet the court looks beyond that and says Westboro's funeral picketing is certainly hurtful and is not, and its contribution to public discourse may be negligible, but we cannot react to that pain by punishing the speaker. As a nation, we have chosen a different course to protect even hurtful speech on public issues to ensure that we do not stifle public debate.
In light of these circumstances, the Supreme Court of the United States ruled that the protesters' speech was within their First Amendment rights. However, several states have drafted laws which would limit public locations where picketing would be allowed in the future. Even after the court's ruling, debate continues, with the public split on issue of morality versus legality.
North rack. Where you guys from?
Words cannot express the depth of our loss and the pain we experienced on March 3rd. I thought that was the worst day of my life. It was the day that my only son, Matt, U.S. Marine Lance Corporal Matthew Snyder, died while serving in Iraq. It was the day his mother and I lost our only son. It was the day his sisters lost their beloved brother. Our son, a hero, dead, only to be compounded by the family being targeted and subject to personal attacks, venomous hate, and injustice at Matt's funeral. It is something no family should have to live through. In my opinion, speaking as a father, the Phelps and the Westboro Baptist Church conduct was so extreme, it went beyond all possible bounds of basic human decency, that it can be regarded as utterly intolerable in a civilized nation. All we wanted to do was bury Matt with dignity and respect. Our son Lance Corporal Matthew Snyder fought for the rights of all Americans, to preserve the basic rights to stand here as we are standing today in front of our country's highest court. There is a civilized way to express an opinion in America, but it does not involve intentionally inflicting emotional distress on others, intentionally harming a private citizen at a private funeral. It's not the constitutional right. Thank you.
Still don't know what I was waiting for, and my time was running wild, a million dead-end streets, and every time I thought I got it made, it seemed the taste was not so sweet.